Keep in mind, the people in question have lied to the masses and claimed that, where we are and what this is, our realm, respectively, not the world. You have no idea what the world is. I guarantee it. It's not the flat Earth, and it's certainly not the globe theory. Um, Supposedly, there's overpopulation. So, based on that, this post has 20,000 people who have seen it, and 9,989 have circulated this. Now, that's all well and good, but there are other gears at work, as it were, that superficial people aren't aware of, because what I often rattle off, most people confuse entertainment with research, which is why you have access to the DARPA internet, which is why you have access to free social media, namely TikTok. That's what I'm using at the moment. This is where I found this. I left this on here. It said the UK is the top of the trilateral city-states, and the trilateral city-states is in league with Israel. It's relevant. And below that, the first thing I saw on here in the comments is, no more time to vote. It's time to stand up and fight. So I wrote back and said, voting is the Hegelian dialectic in practice. Thanks for calling attention to yourself. 2,502 people thought that was a great idea. They like what, who is it, Nederland Ernst had to say? Because they didn't think about it. The point's to think about it. Now, what you're going to hear in this message, aspects of it are true. Aspects of it. The people who are moderating Europe, the people who are moderating Roma or Italy, the middle of the trilateral states, and people who are moderating the District of Columbia, namely America, the bottom of the trilateral city-states, are the same people in question in this fucking video. And people don't understand that. They're the same people who established the earthly abomination that otherwise known as Israel, which is a corruption. It's a golden calf. When you look up at night, that's the guided stars above. I say this a lot because it's very important to understand this, but people don't. If you think of that thing that happened in Germany that I'm not allowed to talk about on TikTok, the flag in question is a bastardization of something that has to do with, I almost just told you more than I should. Part of it has to do with what you see when you look up at night. Yeah, ironically, it has to do with Israel. Do you really think that, the German people having to do with all that other stuff I'm not allowed to talk about would accidentally fashion a flag that has to do with Israel? It's not something I've ever left online before because it's something people should have fucking figured out. Based on, especially, what I've been complaining about often. A lot. A hell of a lot. I've made it a point to echo the same fucking thing again and again and again. And these are things that are superficial to me. But people aren't thinking about what I have to say. Most people don't see what I fucking leave online. And I began this with complaining about, supposedly we're overpopulated. And yet, I can leave a video online and it will have 0 fucking views. Long term. I started up a new account a while back on YouTube. Not TikTok, YouTube. I have quite a few videos I've left on there, and they all have 0 views. I've tried hashtags, I've tried sensational shit, tried this, that, and the other thing. I am fucking censored on the DARPA internet because I can teach you things you are not supposed to know, motherfucker. Here's the video in question. What the fuck do I know?
Jews want to exterminate the European race. Richard Coudenhove Kalergi, who is the father of the European Union and who was funded by the Jewish bankers Rothschild and Warburg. Now, this man wrote a book called Praktischer Idealismus in 1925, in which he stated that the Jews are a master race and that the Jews can only assume the throne of...
They're not a master race.
rule over the world by weakening the European race, and that the means to weakening the European race would be to dissolve all the European nations.
I also want you to appreciate it's not just the Europeans. Do you remember why we were fighting for civil rights, and do you remember what happened to folks with more melanin in their skin? It's not just the Europeans. This is another polarizing message. It's in place to mislead you. It might appeal to people with less melanin, just as if somebody was rattling off shit having to do with Kemet and telling you that, you're just so fucking cool. The most superficial thing under the sun that you could do is wax poetic about your skin color. And that bleeds into polarizing people, banding together based on your skin color. And or focusing on one person, one group of people, so to speak, which is what this video is doing. Look around. Politics, entertainment, religion, all of these things have been bastardized by the people in question. And all of those things directly infect yours and mine and everybody else you could possibly fucking think of, that you will bump into and or you haven't bumped into yet under the sun. All creeds and colors. Because these fucking pieces of shit do not have our best interest in mind. And keeping us divided assures that what they're up to comes together. In other words, their plan will come together or will come to fruition because you and I don't know what we're talking about. And people don't have a clue how to turn this around. I've said this many times, we wouldn't do this on the internet because the internet is their fucking medium, for lack of better words. The only reason you and I have access to the DARPA internet is because we don't pose a threat. But the point's to band together, organize, and execute a plan to see that this shit is stopped. And you and I aren't doing that. Nobody's doing that. Which is why their plan is going to come together or come to fruition. What do I know? Here's the polarizing dog shit.
Destroy all their cultural heritage and their national traditions and replace that with the European Union, and then to invite in Africans, Middle Easterners, and Asians to dilute the blood of Europeans through miscegenation to the...
Now, some of those other, folks having to do with their skin color that are a part of this message in this, particular video, they might like it because they're not being damned or demonized or something along those lines. It's favorable to them. So some people might actually buy into this. Most likely, a lot of people bought into this. Once again, how many people? 20,000 have seen it, and 9,989 have circulated, which means it sounded good to somebody. Because they didn't choose to think about it. Not unlike what I also highlighted. No more time to vote. It's time to stand up and fight. Hegelian dialectic. Does that mean anything to you? Red versus blue, conquer and divide, bread and circuses, motherfucker. You got twilight, you got sunset. Yeah, you got blue and red. You don't get to choose one. Hegelian dialectic. Voting is nonsense. And if you and I were surrounded by adults, no one would ever have bought into voting in the first place. What I'm saying is we are not surrounded by adults, being that we're not surrounded by adults, so most of you probably can't connect the dots, because you would probably ask somebody to think for you.
Point where they became a degenerate mixed race. And then at that point, these people would no longer have any sense of nationhood.
Now, did you hear degenerate mixed race? You hear that? I do want you to think about us corrupting our DNA, because 2020 to present day is a prime example of that. And that was not limited to the Europeans. In other words, what I'm talking about is true, and it makes sense if you fucking think about it. Once these bastards fulfilled a quota, that's only afterwards were you allowed to say things and speak out against the agenda to varying degrees. Between 2020 and roughly 2022, I'm speaking from experience, I was censored like a motherfucker for doing the right thing. In other words, freedom of speech doesn't exist either because people are buying into patently fascist censorship, which I complain about all the goddamn time. If you've heard of canceling, shadow banning, hating, or polarizing positive vibes only, these are just a few examples, all of which cater to censorship, which is fascism. Community guidelines is fascism. Community guidelines is the opposite of freedom of speech. And no one cares. It's also why when I leave videos like this online, they are censored, specifically on TikTok.
And the ancient Jewish messianic prophecies of world rule out of Jerusalem, with Jews maintaining their nationhood and their national status. It would.
Do you understand what I'm saying? The people in question are not corrupting their DNA, but they are corrupting our DNA. Why do you think genetically modified poison has been rolled out? Why do you think good people were trained to call food that used to be full of light and life and healthy organic? Because it opened up the door to genetically modified poison. Why do you think, and keep in mind, that's not just Europeans. This is everybody. This is the masses as a whole. The Goyim. You and I. Why do you think you and I, and picture any fucking color under the sun in terms of melanin or lack thereof, skin color, respectively, shades of brown. I like somebody mentioned that because I grew up in the desert. My sister's Mexican, and yeah, either way, a lot of friends in old days, and that's a whole nother ball of wax. Yeah, brown kids, but technically we're all brown kids, is my point. And I like that. Somebody mentioned that online, and it really stuck with me. Either way, what was I going to say? So men and women, there are two genders, there are two sexes. This makes sense because it's a binary system. Everything fucking reflects this under the goddamn sun, and under the goddamn moon because it's a binary system. You inhale, you exhale, you eat, you shit, you breathe, right? Well, I just said that one. What's another one? Your blood in your veins also reflects, quite literally, the red and the blue because it's a binary system. Through and fucking through. But this has been corrupted, and people were sold a narrative, not unlike calling food organic, opening up the door to genetically modified poison. People were sold, a narrative where they started calling cross-dressing a gender. And they started dressing it up as something else. And it took off like wildfire. Because it was rolled out, well-financed, and well-circulated. Just like the hippies, just like the grunge stuff, just like the emo stuff. All of these things were just testing the waters. This is what these people are up to. If you're paying attention to how the DARPA internet works, our masters are testing reaction times. It's no different from rolling out a social engineering agenda and seeing how many people buy into it. You and I are being tested on a daily basis, and most people are failing miserably. Most people who claim that they're woke and they're so enlightened and they're living in the age of information are quite literally marching in lockstep and work for these people.
Fulfill the Jewish messianic prophecies that the Jews could then rule the world, and this was completely in line with what Nikolai had written in 1917 and has manifested itself recently with the invasion of immigrants from Africa, from the Middle East, and from Asia into Europe, America, and Australia. And they are deliberately setting about to genocide the white race and destroy all sense of nationhood. Jews want to exterminate the Europe.
You can also leave longer videos on TikTok, but people will buy into quite literally anything, which is to say march in lockstep, because they don't want to think for themselves. Look at it this way. Say you were censored online, or you wouldn't be able to make money on this. You would probably do as you were told, right? And that's what people do. That's how they conduct themselves on the internet. This factors into what I was saying about our masters are testing us. And most people are failing the test miserably. Does that make sense? Because if it doesn't, you could watch this video again and you could think about what I said. You could scribble it down so that you might internalize it, because I understand thinking is hard and people are having more and more difficulty these days connecting the goddamn dots. It's one way to put it. Either way, this account, I bet you has thousands of followers. Let's see. 2,000. Less than I thought. But still got 2,731. And they're misleading people. It's a problem. It's a fucking problem. When I see these boot memes, it's ironic based on what people are shopping around. It's pretty fucking ironic. Either way. I just wanted to see if there was any controlled opposition assets or anything that just leap out to me, but it's mostly this kid posting himself. Keep in mind, I'm all about transparency, but now we live in the age of narcissistic reaction videos and superficial dog shit. It's also a shame Muhammad Ali was a racist, but I do like some of the things he said. Same with Malcolm X. I like that Malcolm X was willing to walk the walk to a degree, but I think he was also a controlled opposition asset. I could be wrong. Just the same. That's the best we got in here, at least at my superficial, assessment. But either way, I mean, how many of you are going to see this? How many of you give a fuck? How many of you are capable of thinking for yourself? Most of you probably assume that you are, but 10 to 1. If you and I sat down and had a proper conversation when I'm sober, you probably don't have a goddamn clue what you're talking about. And I would point it out repeatedly, and all I would do is piss you off.